evolving your relationship with money is a very personal process. I do think, though, that all transformation starts at awareness. And if you're going to change your relationship with money, you got to first know where you are and what got you there. Or you might have a bad relationship with debt. You might have a really big spending problem. You might not want to take on more than one credit card. You might not know anything about investing. Like, until you are moderately aware, it's hard to change.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to Flow Over Fear. I have a great guest today. I'm really excited about this one. Aaron Velky is a keynote speaker, a CEO, and coach. His career has been dedicated to building movements, companies, and leaders. Get Out of Your Own Way, which is his coaching company, helps successful entrepreneurs to find a clear direction in their lives and their business. They find more revenue, they find more freedom, and they find more purpose in their lives and their business. He leads retreats and leadership training. I know he's got a retreat coming up in May that we're going to talk about. Leadership trainings for hundreds of people across the United States, creating change for other emerging leaders and companies. He's the CEO of Money Club, an economic empowerment and financial wellness organization that blends personal finance with personal development. And he's the author of a guidebook called Let Her Play, which is a guide for sports coaches and parents that coach female athletes. Outside of the professional sphere, Aaron is a dad, a new dad, a comic book nerd, and an adrenaline junkie. And we're going to jump into a lot of that today. Thanks for joining me, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Adam. Man, I'm really excited to be here. Really grateful to be here.
Yeah, me too, man. This is great. And just, reading through your bio, you're doing a lot of incredible things, but you're doing a lot of different things, which is really cool. How do you balance all of that stuff? How do you juggle all of the knives, so to speak, and make sure that you're getting balance in your own life?
I have learned to let go of balance in some ways. To use the moniker that's in your background, right? The flow that I tend to find is letting go of balance and always finding my way to harmony. And I like the word harmony a little bit better because it puts less of a pressure on equality, so to say. I find myself wildly out of balance a lot. However, I like to think of harmony as, I can swing all the way up to one side of the keyboard, and if I hit the right notes, they still harmonize, they still work together. So that's sort of the way that I think about it. The way that it happens in practicality is systems, really good organization, and more than anything, I try to pay attention to what matters and absolutely let go of what doesn't. Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating that you're mentioning the systems and things like that. And I love that approach on balance, meaning you're kind of, so it sounds like you're letting go of balance, but approaching more harmony. I really, really dig that. Because I always hear professionals and high achievers say that they're trying to find balance, but struggling with it. I never hear professionals and high achievers saying, I finally found that balance. So finding harmony, that's huge. But the idea of using systems, this has come up a few times in a couple of different interviews, as a way to kind of get over the stress, get over the anxiety, and get over just the chaos. How are you using those systems and organization to really help fuel you and make you a better leader and juggle all this stuff?
Systems have helped me, and systems by design are intended to do this, but I've spent a lot of time avoiding them. Now I have a much better relationship with systems, and systems help me stay in the thing that I'm great at. And even understanding that can help someone go from no systems to 3 or 4 or 5 much faster than it took me. Systems keep you where you're great. If that's true and you're great at conversations, have more conversations. You'll do well in business and you'll do well with the outcomes of relationships and the power of the network. If you're really good at Excel sheets, cool, then systemize the other pieces. Whatever your lane is, it can help you stay in your lane. And I find that most of what happens, even in the space of personal development, is like, take your weaknesses and work on them. And to some extent, I understand that. There are some deficiencies that we might have to cover and grow and nurture. And also, double, triple, quadruple down on what you're best at. And I've found that when you do that, things happen. Systems can be people, can be a person that takes on your responsibilities or a niche of your business, can be a system for groceries. I don't grocery shop anymore because I know that the drive to the grocery store, the shopping, and then the drive home is a 2-hour task that takes me away from the thing I'm best at. And a system could be an automated software or some kind of tool that's available online to help you go from A to B or C much faster. And when you start to open up to like, oh, I think I could systemize this, what naturally happens is you end up more in your flow state. And I'm a believer that when you're in your flow state, you win.
Wow. That's been a huge revelation for me recently as I've listened to people like yourself talk about these kinds of things, because I've noticed that you and others like you are so able to just achieve more when they have that realization that you can lean more heavily into the things that you're good at and that you enjoy. And is that really the thing that are you attributing things that you're good at to what you enjoy, or how are you finding that lane that you want to be in?
That's such a great question. I do think there's a really important Venn diagram in there. Ideally, you want to find the middle, right, where they overlap. If you're good at it and you enjoy it, oh man, have you found the win? If it's only one of those, then there may be an opportunity to strip it down, dilute it, change it, adapt it so it is enjoyable. Generally speaking, though, we are wired chemically to enjoy things we're good at. We're just like programmed to look for, oh, I enjoy this almost because I'm good at it. Just like we enjoy winning, just like we enjoy the rush of the victory, we're kind of naturally predisposed to find it.
Yeah.
If there's anything, though, that creates more flow, it's getting things out of the way. So my company name, Get Out of Your Own Way, is sort of this mentality. If you can remove the things that are holding you back, usually it's us, the beliefs, the patterns that we have, you're probably going to fly because we're meant to fly. And if everyone is taking the thing that they're best at and leaning into that and has systemized around that, you end up with a bunch of super people who are just cool, high functioning, high achieving people that not only do well, but they do well for others.
Yeah. So that's a great segue too into kind of what you do as a coaching practice here. So it sounds like you're kind of helping people with systems, but really getting people to address their limiting beliefs and everything like that. So what is it what are you finding that is most often the thing that's in our way? What like, I know we ourselves are probably in our own way, but what part of that makes it so that prevents us from progressing?
Well, I like to think of, let's first define a belief, because I think this is important. When I looked up the word belief in the dictionary like 3 weeks ago, and in the definition is the word belief. I was flabbergasted, just so circular. It's a really hard thing to define. So the way I define a belief is it is a choice of truth. Now that almost immediately can help someone with reconstructing their whole world. You might find that the choice of truth that you have is that you have to work incredibly hard to be successful.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to take you a certain direction. Your life is going to end up calibrated to that. You might find that the choice of truth is like, if I struggle and suffer now, my reward will come in the future. which is perpetuated by not only religious beliefs, but a lot of entrepreneurial sort of like hustle grind porn that happens that's so loud.
Yeah.
Well, if you change those choices of truth, you can change your future, your actions, your present, your habits. But what I find is largely at the root of most in entrepreneurs and in very ambitious individuals that may not necessarily be entrepreneurs is one simple denominator that is a choice of truth. I'm not enough. And that package of messed up thinking can be brought on by parents, school, sports. It can be brought on by a life event, trauma. It doesn't necessarily matter. But usually at a core, we have some kind of contest with, am I capable of, am I worthy of? And when we get to the bottom of it, that's when magic starts to happen and people start to change.
Wow. Yeah, that's such a huge thing that I want to kind of touch on too. And I wanted to try and bring this back to you and see how you might have experienced that, because I get the feeling that anybody that's kind of had that revelation, had that like aha moment, has experienced that feeling of not being enough in some way or something like that. How did that begin for you? How did you discover that? And what was the change that happened in you?
I've come face to face with this numbers of times.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people to hear. Like, as a coach, I'm not here, and even my team, like, we're not here to tell you that we're better than and have conquered it. We're here to walk with you through it. The numbers of times that I've run into that have always been at growth plates. Whenever I'm really intentional about expanding, I come smack into this. And what that often looks like for me, I'll give you a couple examples of this, but I'll architect it first. What that usually looks like for me is a lot of fear that's not real. It isn't even baked in reality. It's like, I'm afraid of being on stage. I'm afraid of speaking in public. I'm afraid of these things. And the reality is, underneath that, I just don't believe that I'm good enough for that. I don't believe that I'm good enough, period, to have the results of that. So a couple of examples. I can remember very vividly my career in soccer. So I coached for about 12 years. But prior to that, I was in college. And prior to that, I played in high school and sort of club in the youth stages. When I was in high school, I tore my quad, and like that injury rippled through every doctor that told me, like, look, you're not going to play again. It's a really serious injury. It's probably best for you to take a long-term healing approach and just set your boots down, like run, jog. Well, I was really committed to playing in college. It was like my whole dream. Playing for life was my whole dream. And at that time, my senior year, that's when recruiting happened. So I missed that shot. But I remember walking on, I like sent emails and letters to the coach at the college that I went to. It was a Division I college, and they opened up a window for walk-ons to show up. And before that even became like an official opportunity, I would go play on like the college campus quad with the varsity team. And all of these thoughts went through my head. I kid you not, all of these at every moment, whenever I got the ball, whenever I left, whenever I walked up. They're more handsome than me. They're stronger than me. They're faster than me. They're smarter than me. They probably have better grades than me. They're probably like rocket scientists while they're also athletes. Wow, that kid's cool. Wow, he's got an English accent. Wow, that kid's really tough and strong, and his feet move so fast. Like, every possible comparison was made. And I was so externally motivated. I was not internally motivated. I had a chip on my shoulder, and I wanted to prove something so I could push through it. But deep down, man, I was terrified. That story panned out well. I ended up walking onto the team and played through the rest of my college career. It showed up again, though, when I wanted to quit my job. And I did it smart. I built side income and grew and changed and evolved before I left. So I didn't need my job when I quit. But I do remember the crisis that happened on day one of quitting. So I quit May 31st, 2015. June 1, I party. And for like 5 days, I'm like, I'm free. Yeah. Woo.
Right.
June 6th, I got hit with a panic attack that lasted 8 days. How am I going to make money? Who's my boss? I don't know what to do. I have no direction. There's no structure. I'm lost. And all of those fears, the same fears with comparison happening, like, look at all the entrepreneurs I know. I'm not them. I'm not good enough to be them. Came crashing back in. And in that phase, I didn't have a place to go anymore. I'd already quit.
Yeah.
So both of those are examples of places I've confronted it. And I confront it on other daily basis that I now know how to deal with it so it doesn't get that magnified. But it comes from my place in childhood. It comes from what I was taught as a kid. It comes from me being bullied. It comes from me being outcast and made fun of. And to internalize all that really young isn't something that was my fault. I don't blame myself for that. I was a kid. I was impressionable.
Right.
But as an adult, it is my fault if I don't work on it. And I've spent a lot of time and energy working on it.
Yeah. So I know that a lot of our listeners would kind of relate to a lot of that bullying and stuff that they've learned as kids, like that actually imprint those beliefs in us. I know I do. So can you talk a little bit to that? Like what kind of experiences shaped that paradigm for you?
I was always the guy kicked out. I was always the last pick, and I was always kind of the kid that you would include if you had pity. At least that was my perception. And part of the work has been, is this real or is it perception? That's a big part of the work and some of the coaching structure as well.
Sure.
I remember feeling like I would never fit in. And here's the irony of that chronicle in my life. Now, what I desire most and what many of your listeners, you listening right now, may aspire to do is to stand out and to be outstanding. I was outcast then, that's different, but I want to be outstanding now. So by nature, I kind of learned what it meant to be alone and independent and on my own. And now I understand that's a strength. I've done the inner work to kind of heal some of that. But I can remember being picked on for the way that I looked. I was picked on for like the clothes that I had on. Like I never was a cool kid. And I had somebody one time, this was like, I don't know, 4 years ago. Like, I don't know, there was a goofy exchange and they were like, oh, you're such a pretty boy. And I was like, I have never in my life been called that. That's amazing. That's
right.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. And it was just such an interesting exchange because that was not what I identified as, right? I was always the guy that was like the less attractive, less cool, less liked kid, the nerd that was just like, you get invited sort of out of pain and pity, not out of pride and excitement. And I know many of us can relate to that. And yet I learned almost by default how to stand out. What a gift.
Yeah. That's such a cool story. I mean, and I know that a lot of people can relate to it. So thank you for sharing that vulnerably. That we are so primed by what we've experienced as children that we think that that's what we still are today. And, but we're constantly shedding that skin. We're constantly growing. And so your growth took you to this point where clearly you weren't the last person picked. You were, you became great at soccer. You joined a Division I. You walked onto a Division I soccer field and started competing with them despite the limiting beliefs. So, what was it? I think, was there a trigger point in your life or in your young life where that switch flipped and you actually were able to tell yourself, or at least convince yourself to work harder than everyone else to achieve? How did that look?
Well, I think going the soccer route is the first time I had ever understood the relationship between work and outcome. I was like naturally pretty good at school, and I just kind of figured out how to learn, so I didn't have to worry too much about that piece. But the athletic piece, I had to really, really segregate myself in order to find something. Now, my college career was not stand out by any means. I struggled with limiting beliefs once I got there and a really bad mentality that if I could go back and change anything, it would be to go back with my mindset now because I would be a much different player. But that journey from like, hey, you can walk on to actually being accepted on the team really was a commitment to outwork everyone else. And by committing to that, a couple things started to fall into place. One, if I got attention for outworking somebody, I almost couldn't be rejected, right? And I think the coach, Pete Caringi, he just retired. So congrats, Pete. I'm grateful for you and all that you taught me. And like, I don't think he had a choice but to notice, because, man, at some point it was like, dude, everyone that's starting and been on this team for several years is second and third and fourth. Who the hell is this kid that just outworked you?
Right.
And even if all I was a solid practice dummy, at least he had to be like, well, I mean, he's winning.
Yeah.
That lesson, though, really attached a couple different beliefs in my system. And I always am grateful to share these, because I don't know that we hear them often enough. Mm-hmm. There were very talented players on the team that I don't think worked hard. And I was a kid with very little talent that worked hard. And that opened up more doors for me, and has opened up more doors for me than any kind of talent, hands down, flat out. The other thing that changed through the course of soccer is that I'm just a gritty kid, and I'm a gritty entrepreneur. I'm relentless. If you beat me, you're going to have to beat me again, and that's going to suck for you. Because I'm going to then, even if you beat me again, I'm going to come back and you're going to have to beat me a third time. And eventually, we're playing a very different game. You're playing to win. I'm playing to keep playing. And the game at some point is a war of attrition. Who's going to quit first? And it won't be me. And it taught me something interesting about hard work. If I just don't quit, I'll probably get what I want. Now, not everything I want. However, many of the things that we all want are on the other side of a really deep commitment. And I think we're mostly afraid of that commitment.
Wow. I love that perspective of playing to keep playing versus playing to win. Because if you're always playing to keep playing, then yeah, you're outplaying anybody else that's gonna stop playing over time. And so, can you kind of expand on that last piece there, that that you are, you're playing to keep playing, and you want to, can you just expand on that a little bit more?
Man, I love talking about this, because this is a really hard thing to wrap your mind around. Mm-hmm. When we start with any pursuit, what we tend to look for is a measurable outcome. Okay, I worked. This worked, I won. Or I set this goal and I hit it. And at a certain point, you either run out of goals that feel exciting, or you're just numb to it all, or you realize that the way that you're living and the way that you're going about your day-to-day is wildly dissatisfactory. Mm-hmm. And that's because the attachment to wins is like a dopamine strike. I'm just going to jab, jab, jab. And, as many like syringes as you have is how you measure your happiness. Okay, I hit my goal, happy. Hit my goal, happy. Well, if you run out of wins and goals, you're going to run out of happy. And we see this all the time in high performers. My approach has been, can I play a game that I love so flippin' much that no matter whether I win or lose, I will keep fighting, and I will keep playing, and I will keep laughing, and I will keep loving. And to do that requires a different criteria. There's a great way to look at this is to think about a finite and infinite game. So a finite game is a couple things. It's agreed upon rules, fixed number of players, and agreed win or loss. You also have a winner and a loser. Mm-hmm. Then you have an infinite game where you have no agreed upon rules, no agreed upon number of players, and really no criteria for how you win or lose. You get to self-create it. Yeah. Entrepreneurship is often played like a finite game. I'm number one. I made more income. I hit more goals. We're the best in the industry. We're the top in the city. We're the top in the state. Okay. So you're like jab, jab, jab. Cool. But entrepreneurship is also an infinite game. The whole game is to keep playing. That's the game I'm playing. I just want to keep playing this game for the rest of my life. I could change brands, build a new book, write a new subject, delete my whole history and be like, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. I can't believe I did that. And to be able to do that, you have to live by new standards. What internal flame can you activate and keep burning for the rest of your fucking life? And if you can find that and find your flow state in that, dude, you're limitless. But it's a different practice and different principle entirely.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. That finding that flow in that passion and that thing that you want, and I like the idea of the finite versus the infinite game, because if you're playing that infinite game with no rules, it seems like you've gone down that path in your life. I mean, you jumped out of after. It looks like after college, you kind of jumped into the coaching career where you coached female athletes, and as a male, I'd imagine that was that presented its own challenge and probably its own lessons, right? And then obviously you expanded into different things, and we can get to that. But I want to get to that coaching part first. What did you learn from that in the letter play that you released later?
Man, I think that who I am is largely a direct outcome of the young women that taught me. Mm-hmm. They taught me way more than I taught them. I'm pretty confident in that. Yeah. I had been around the ecosystem of sports where toughness and rigor and discipline and like everything manly was like the thing. Mm-hmm. And when I got to coach some girls initially, it like broke every system. I couldn't like push. I had to flow. They taught me how to be responsive versus reactive. One thing about sports that I will forever appreciate, and that we can appreciate here in this moment, I could never prepare a halftime speech, which means that no matter what I might want to say at the beginning of the game, it's all based on the half. I couldn't prepare. It had to just be real and authentic. And that's very much the way I coach now, and it's the way that I'm here today. Like, I don't have a prepared speech. I'm just here to find the groove that feels correct. That was one big lesson. The other is that emotional intelligence was far superior to athletic intelligence in that space. My ability to like connect with them as people allowed me to push them. And that's really true in the space of coaching now, and even get out of your own way. The whole team is really bought into this practice. Until someone trusts you, you can't push them. You have to get to trust first. And what they would say, and this is a really awesome compliment, they would say like, Coach Aaron, you pushed me harder than any other coach, but I knew that even when I was angry or frustrated or upset or like really down on myself, I knew that you had my best intention in mind. And that's really important. Like, I could take a lot of lesson from that comment. Another big lesson from them was that no matter what happens in the sports arena, we are people beyond it, and performance on the field is largely dictated by the ecosystem off the field. And a confident player was a successful player, in my opinion. To build that took a lot of work sometimes. Sometimes I had to rebuild confidence. I had to like mend psyches. And I think that's true for all of us, but in particular with girls. Like, I never understood this as a guy through middle school, mostly because I was going through my own shit. But as a guy that watched this, they had to be so much that was contradictory. It was like they had to be athletic, but then they also had to be like gentle, and they had to be like strong, and then they had to be like the weaker gender, and then like everything. They had to be like sexy, and like attractive, but then they were also expected to be like don't grow up too fast. Like, it was just so conflicting. And man, I dealt with things like weight issues and body image. I dealt with things like mental health disorders and eating disorders. I dealt with parental death and challenges at home, like all of it. And I was just a soccer coach. I was like 23 years old when I started. I didn't sign up for that. And yet, because I committed to helping them become the best young women they could, I took that stuff on. And they showed me what I was capable of handling in so many ways. I'm so grateful for that group. Many groups.
Well, not a lot of people would take the time to really look at those differences. I mean, I feel like a lot of coaches out there, and maybe I'm wrong, but would take that on and just try to stick the round peg in the square hole, or whatever they need to do it. But you took it on and you learned the lessons there. And if you could give any advice to maybe other coaches or other men in that space, or parents, what would be like maybe the 2 or 3 pieces of advice you would give to parents of young female athletes?
So the book aptly titled Let Her Play would be one piece of advice. The largest problem I ran into was players experiencing guilt, sadness, shame, or disorientation because what their parents wanted was different from what they wanted. Mm-hmm. Their parents wanted wins, success, accolades, achievement, and they just wanted to play. Or they didn't want to play, and their parents wanted them to live out their childhood dream of playing soccer in college. So that's one. The other piece of advice this is probably more for coaches than parents, but I think it's relative to both. We coaches tend to think we have the answers, and sometimes we do. I also think the value of being a coach is sometimes asking the questions. Mm-hmm. And if we do that, we have to be prepared to listen. And sometimes the players had better insights than I did. Yeah. And that might be, how do we adjust your position? Are you in the right position? It might be, what do you think the team needs right now? Like, I got a lot of value out of playing laser tag, just like I did at practice. Sometimes the team needed that. Mm-hmm. So sometimes listening is better than speaking when you're a coach. Yeah. And then my last one I'll share here for a parent. And if you want more of this, Let Her Play is a good book, and I'm working on Let Him Play, so that's coming out later. But if you're really interested in change, one of the best places to look for opportunities to help your daughter in sports is in the car ride home. Mm-hmm. It's where the most damage is done. People are crushing their kids in the car. They're like, did you see that Shannon was open in the middle?
Oh, wow.
Next time, make sure that you strike with your left foot. Like, if she has not invited a conversation for critique, it is not the place to offer it. And parents should be really mindful of the conversation they have in the car, because unlike any other conversation that you might have, there is no way out. And when a kid feels trapped, one of two things happens. Either they are going to internalize that critical voice, and it's going to be the voice that follows her for the rest of her life. When she applies for a job, she's going to be like, you're probably missing something. You're going to miss that pass to Shannon. Or when she goes to take on a big responsibility, she's going to be like, I can't. I missed that pass to Shannon. I'm going to miss this too. So that's one. Or she will learn to bury all of her hurt and pain and sadness, and emotionally will clam up. And for the rest of her life, she will be trying to figure out, how do I emotionally express myself, because it's never been safe. And that is such a bigger impact than any loss on a soccer field, a baseball field, a softball field will ever have. Parents should be really wary of how they enter that conversation. Let Her Play has a framework about it if they need it. But even if it's just an awareness thing, be hyper mindful. That is a breeding ground for self-content.
That's great advice, and I appreciate that as someone with a young daughter now, knowing that there's ways to handle these things that you've learned through that experience, and from both sides. Being on a men's team, coaching women's teams, and that coaching had evolved from there. And I know I'm probably skipping a whole lot of life here, but you took that coaching on into something called the Money Club, which was really helping with financial education. How did that transition come along, and what was the approach there, and how are you helping people to learn more about finance?
Being around kids for a lot of time, kind of just brought to light there's something missing in school. I was at that time studying a lot of money. A friend of mine named Josh, he and I came together and we're like, maybe we can put this 2-lane highway into an intersection. So like any entrepreneurship endeavor, the goal is to take two things that are unlike and make them like. So we took this idea of learning about money, all the things we wish we were taught as a kid, and we combined it with this idea of sport. So we made a sport out of money. And we started a nonprofit. It wasn't called Money Club at the time, but the goal then was to create an experience where someone could learn about money mostly through failure. And so we engineer this game. We get a whole movement happening. We grow it. And the nonprofit space doesn't really yield well, so we decided to go into venture. And we raised some private money, some venture-backed money comes in, and we're able to build scale because we knew that an in-person sport wouldn't work. Well, along that line, what we had learned was that kids need to learn about money, adults need to learn about money, a lot of people need to learn about money. And if we're going to really tackle this, we've got to be growing ourselves. So it forced me to really start to learn and study and find mentors, et cetera. Because at that time, I'm like, 26 years old.
Yeah.
The focus on kids, though, was our mission. And one of the hardest things that has been a part of the Money Club journey is that we had raised capital and we had spent a year and a half building an online platform that would have let us scale. It made teaching really easy. It still exists. It makes so that a teacher, a counselor doesn't need to master money to be able to conversate and communicate about it. So really great tool. And we finished in February 2020. So like 3 weeks after we finished a $275,000 build, education like shut down. And we lost every contract. We lost every proposal, every RFP that we had worked hard to create was gone.
Wow.
So in sort of the chaos of that, we ended up pivoting into workplace wellness. We had a lot of conversations during COVID on like, hey, adults, here's how you navigate this very uncertain water with your finances. Here's how you can plan. Here's how you can remediate. All of those things started to be conversations. And then before you knew it, we had built out a curriculum where we would come into a company and offer workplace benefits. So to make that long story very clear, what we had done over the course of about 7 years is built a staircase from like young adults all the way to wealth of how you build, how you understand, how you learn, how you grow with money. And I don't think I was nearly the leader that I needed to be in a lot of ways. I had a lot of growing up to do, but I was really passionate about it. And just like soccer, my hard work and the team's hard work is what kept us moving forward when many closed. The whole mission there is that I and our team believe that if you give someone financial intelligence, it changes the person, it changes the family, it changes the community, it changes the business, all of that. And we wanted to replicate financial education because it's largely missing everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, I can definitely relate to that and understand that. And do you feel that also comes, that lack of financial intelligence or some of our paradigms are tied into our values or our beliefs as we're, say, growing up, kind of going back to that a lot of those beliefs are shaped in that time by how our parents might be have a relationship with money, or how those we know we have relationships with money, and how do we break that and reconnect a new relationship?
It's a really powerful question, and one of the hard parts about topics of personal finance that I think goes undiscussed is it's really personal. It's like different for everybody. We have our own values, what we buy, what we like, etc. Like you put any two couples together and you're like, hey, what do you buy and like to spend your money on? And then you ask the other person, like, what do you buy and spend your money on? They're probably different. So evolving your relationship with money is a very personal process. I do think, though, that all transformation starts at awareness. And if you're going to change your relationship with money, you got to first know where you are and what got you there. Or you might have a bad relationship with debt. You might have a really big spending problem. You might not want to take on more than one credit card. You might not know anything about investing. Like until you are moderately aware, it's hard to change. Your relationship with money, Adam, I love the way you said that. Like it's our relationship with money. It's not money, it's our relationship with it. And, some of you listening may have a toxic relationship with money. You got to break up with that girlfriend, boyfriend, friend, whatever it is. You got to break up, and then you can form a healthier bond. Sometimes education can catalyze that. Sometimes it requires an event to catalyze that. My hope is that you can catch it before the event, because the event is never a good event. But transformation takes time. It takes effort and energy. And if you're willing to learn, challenge your own beliefs, unlearn what you may think you know, you can actually make tremendous change in your financial future without having like millions in the bank or even money in the bank. It's your relationship with money that's got to change first.
Mm-hmm. That's and I don't know if you agree with this, but that's really true of any relationship or anything that you want, any transformation. It's either going to happen before the event occurs, and so hopefully you can catch it then, or it's going to be an event, and typically that transformation is be a bad event. It's a health scare, it's a DUI or things like that. Yeah, so it's certainly true with money as well. So one of the key takeaways that I'm kind of getting from this conversation, which is really great, is that you've developed a sense of humility through this whole process, even though you're young and starting all of these things and experiencing a lot of these different transformations. How did you build that humility, and how does that humble nature play into what your coaching is now, and how you're helping other people to succeed?
Humility is a really good word to unpack. Mm-hmm. I'm going to explain two definitions of humility. One that I lived by and ascribed to, and then one that has evolved from a lot of work. Humility to me meant downplaying, people-pleasing, self-sacrifice, and in almost so many ways, undervaluing myself. That's what humility showed up as. I think it's a noble trait, but it came with all these nefarious agendas attached to it. It, by so many terms, was a limiting belief and a limiting commitment. The way I describe humility now is 5 words. Humility, being humble, is ownership with awareness and service. That helped free me from a lot of really messed up tethers, because the other way was like, don't brag, don't say you're good at it, don't be good at it, actually just fit in with the crowd, just hide.
Yeah.
And this new definition allows me to think of this entirely different. I'm not humble when I'm unsuccessful, because what kind of humble world am I actually creating? I'm creating like suppression is humility. If I own that I'm really good, I'm a really good coach. I have helped a lot of people make a lot of change in their life, and I'm really good at it. And if I understand with awareness that there's a time and a place to say that, and a time and a place not to say that, and maybe a way to say that that's connective, a way to say that that's off-putting, now I've got a different mechanism here. Because now what I'm doing is I'm still aware of my strength. And some of you listening have amazing strengths, and you should never have to downplay that. I'm really good at this. There's a way to say that that's ownership. There's a way to say that that's arrogance. The service part is also important. This is where the humility really ties in. If you have awareness and you can offer service, help people. I have no problem coming down to wherever anyone is. I will pick up garbage. I will help someone like rake leaves. If we're putting together an event, sometimes I have to tell myself like, hey, you've also got your responsibilities to handle, because I'm over here helping everyone else. But I've got no issue with any kind of hierarchy, none. Because from a place of service, that is humility to me. And that redefinition really freed me from having to suppress myself, my character, and my strengths. It set me free.
Wow. That's a great definition, and I appreciate that, because looking at both sides of that, you could find the faults and you could find the superpowers. Finding the faults of, well, on one side of the coin, you're being a people pleaser if you're not intentional about it, and that. I mean, there's there's good and bad in really any noble words or seemingly negative words. I mean, we talk about there being superpowers in fear as well.
Yep.
But the way I wanted to unpack the ownership and awareness and service in there again a little bit more, because with regard to awareness, what does that awareness look like? Is it just being aware of what, how you're living in that experience, or aware of your own strengths, or what does that look like?
To me, it's an awareness of the ecosystem that you're in, because there's not always a place to own outwardly. You can sometimes own internally. And it's an awareness of why you want to share. So, for example, if I'm in a room of kids, what I may need to own is that, I've built an awesome life and it's taught me a lot. I've also had to work very hard for it. So if I can own that, my intention for sharing is, and the awareness I have is like, I'm here to help these kids. Can I show them an example of what's possible? There might be another ecosystem where in a group of men, I deeply want to share and I like outwardly own that things are going great and I'm growing and everything's awesome, because I want them to respect me. And in that case, my ownership might be internal. Hey, you are strong. You don't need to prove it to anybody here. You don't need to say it. It doesn't need to be said. And I think understanding the context of why you share is a deep set of work. We really have to understand our motivations and be able to hear our own inner child and what he is screaming for, he or she. And my sense is that when we go to share, we often have the top line agenda and the bottom line agenda. And in developing more awareness, these things start to overlap and they just become one agenda. And in developing awareness is a really hard thing. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
So it sort of masks the difficulty of this. But as you build awareness, what you may find is that you're sharing for reasons that aren't necessary and missing the chances to share where it's most meaningful. And when you say, hey, I remember having a basic job and now I have a really fulfilling lifestyle where I get to help people all the time become more bright. And I'm so proud of that. And I'm very proud of myself. And I also am so proud of all the people that have helped me. That that's coming from the right place and landing in the right place. And if you can figure that piece out, even with clunky practice, I really feel like you can make a dent, because we need people that are great at what they do, and to tell people they're great at what they do, because they can make a dent in the world if they do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like that ownership piece comes first. So you own it. You own what you're good at. You own that piece. And then you have this awareness of your environment, your ecosystem, of whatever you're participating in, and interpret that as far as how you can best serve in that community. Is that fair to say?
I love
awesome. That's a beautiful way of looking at it, and I appreciate you you sharing that. And I guess it begs the question too: is everybody coachable? I know it's a bit of a loaded question, but
it is.
I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
I don't think so. I have had to turn people away, and interestingly, when people ask about coaching, depending on whether or not I have space, I will sometimes put them through hoops to see, hey, are you coachable? Hey, fill this form out. The form has deep questions. It's not a 2-word answer.
Yeah.
I think that the reason we may or may not be coachable is largely about how willing are we to look in the mirror and self-assess. To me, if you're willing to look in the mirror, you're coachable. Most people don't want to look in the mirror and take responsibility for where they are, what they've got, who they are, who they're becoming. And it's impossible to be coachable if you haven't accepted your responsibility. Because as a coach, I cannot make any dream happen. I can only accelerate the speed at which it happens. And that's a really important thing, right? I can't steer a car that's not moving. I can't guide a bowling ball that's not rolling. I have to have some kind of movement. I can help you get to the goal faster and probably more accurately. but you're not coachable unless you're already in motion. And being in motion in this case, in the coaching container, is, are you willing to look at yourself in the mirror and take responsibility?
Take responsibility for everything, all of everything that's affecting that person.
Yeah. Your tendencies, your patterns, your placement, your results, your habits, your beliefs. Did I say habits? Because habits. Habits. And probably most centrally, knowing that this can ruffle feathers, you have to be willing to take responsibility for what you don't have. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to look externally for that. Yeah.
And that's always a tough one, because when we get into that victim mentality of like, this stuff is happening to me, I have no control over it, I have no responsibility over it. That's a dangerous place. And it's a place that causes addiction, causes pain, causes trauma. And when we're stuck there, as you say, we're not coachable, and that's also a dangerous place. If we can't be coachable, we can't grow. When we're not growing, we're not getting fulfilled.
Yep.
So I appreciate the clarification on that. Responsibility is the place to start. Looking in the mirror is that place to start. And so when you're looking at so I imagine people who are coming to you for coaching have reached something of they feel stuck. They're feeling like they're feeling like maybe they reached a plateau. What is your process of breakthrough? How if there is one, or is there something you take people through to help them to get beyond their limitations and fears to get to the point they want to get to?
A plateau is an interesting place, and I think we tend to discount it for not being meaningful. When we're on a growth curve for a long time in personal development or in entrepreneurship, we hit a plateau and we're like, something's wrong, fire.
Right.
And I first think it's important to reclassify what a plateau is. If we've encountered a space where we're not growing as much, one of two things is happening. Either we are not clear on what journey is next, mm-hmm. or we do not have the skills, materials, team, whatever you want to call it, ready for that next journey. When you reframe it that way, then it's like, okay, am I clear on my next journey? Probably not. I'm probably at a place of like, well, I've gotten here and I don't know what's next. I'm not sure. I'm not clear. It is fuzzy, it's murky, or it's misconfigured. Mm-hmm. The other is, maybe I know how to get there. I'm not the guy. Maybe my belief is that I'm not the guy, or I'm not the person, or I'm not capable, or I don't have the team in place. Like, I see that this is possible, but I just don't have the team. And every major hike begins with a team. Right? If you want to climb Everest, you've got a team. You ain't going alone. That's dangerous. So similar to what I know you've helped many do with a triathlon, you've got multiple phases in that journey. And it all starts with, I'm going to sign up for that. But when we hit a plateau, we're not sure what to sign up for. And once you make the decision of this is where I want to go, then the growth starts again. Mm-hmm. But I find that people want to rush out of plateaus because they don't like the discomfort of not knowing. And that's a great place to ask the questions. That's like the magic. Like, don't leave right now. Don't exit. I know it's uncomfortable to sit in silence.
Right.
But it's really important because something in your system is telling you whatever you've been doing isn't working anymore. You've got to make change. And we tend to just like find the immediate outlet, and all of a sudden we're like lost in the same problem that we just had again because we didn't stop long enough to figure it out. Mm-hmm. It's like the GPS has not yet finished recalculating, and we just turn. So we have to sit in that discomfort for a little while. And I think that many, many entrepreneurs get to a plateau and it's like warning signs. And I would say that if you're in a plateau or you feel like you're approaching one, the best thing to do is to like welcome it. Okay, let me scale back a little bit. Let me take a break. Let me like make 2 hours a day of free time. Let me get back to my values, back to the things that I started this journey for the first place based on. Like that kind of stuff opens you up, because otherwise you're copy pasting the the same problem and going to perpetuate it even further.
Yeah, that's so huge. I mean, just the idea that if you're feeling discomfort in a lot of things, a lot of time that could just be a signal that you do need to recalibrate and relook at what you need and just ask the questions, get curious. I mean, maybe it's that, you talk about the awareness of being aware and the power of being aware that all transformation starts with awareness. Usually the next step is getting curious about it. And then taking that curiosity and finding out where that next leap is going to come from. So that's huge, huge advice. Man, Aaron, I wish we could talk for another hour because this has been just huge. But I have to ask you because I wanted to. I know you just had a new baby, you're a new father. How has that changed your perspective in your life? Has it changed in any way, or?
It has. Nothing that I've ever done in every capacity, entrepreneurship, pursuits, passions, friendships, nothing's been forever. Mm-hmm. It's the first thing that's been forever. I'm a dad forever. And that's got its own gravity to it and its own unique, awesome flavor to it as well. It's presented a lens of change in a lot of ways. And there have been a lot of hard circumstances that I've had to navigate around change outside of that come from that. So it definitely invites a new palette and a different taste for things. Mm. It has been a beautiful process. It's been a clunky process, chaotic process. But it's also one where I'm learning a lot. He's teaching me a lot. He's 6 months old. He'll be 7 months old tomorrow. He's teaching me a lot. And I'm really grateful for that chance to have to regularly learn in a new way all the time.
Do you feel that you were prepared well, given your experience, working with kids and in the past and all of this kind of stuff?
I chuckle because, so Emerson is almost 7 months, and 7 months ago I was like, we didn't know the gender, so I'm like, girl. Because I'm like, at least I know what 10 to 17 is. I know that space.
Right.
I think that I feel some sense of understanding of what he will need. The baby phase is very new to me and very difficult for me. So mm-hmm. I'm trying to give myself a lot of grace and offer a lot of patience to myself, because this is not a easy experience given what I already know. It's wildly different.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot of beauty, a lot of pain, a lot of joy, a lot of everything that's coming, and but it's also wonderful, and so I'm really happy for you on that. And I'm one of the key takeaways I got from this conversation. I'm very grateful for. What was beautiful about this is that in every direction we went a lot of different directions, and I'm hoping we could do a round 2 and go deeper on a lot of this stuff. But I learned that from the aspect of a coach, a lifelong coach that you are, really, that you are constantly learning, and you're learning from people, and there is that sense of awareness and curiosity and continuous growth from your end, which is hugely powerful. And it's one of the reasons I love this format too, is I get to learn from people like you. So selfishly, I'm grateful for that. But where can people find you, and what? And you've got a new book. You've got a book coming. Tell us a little bit about that too.
Well, Let Her Play came out in 2020. I decided that, especially with a son, the plan was always to do a Let Him Play, but in 2020, sports stopped. So I was like, let me cool this down. Let Him Play is sort of an homage and a tribute to me becoming a dad. So it's less, I have a lot of experience, and more, here are the commitments that, based on my experience, I'd like to make as a dad, and here's what you can learn too. So I'm really excited about that. I'm not sure when that'll be out, but I plan on releasing that this year. Get out of your own way. If you find yourself stuck or at a plateau, you can just go to areyouinyourownway.com and learn about what we have going on. Just reach out to us, schedule a call, and we'll figure out how we can help. We've got a retreat in May and in July that is coming up. We'll probably do one in quarter 3 or 2, and then in quarter 4 as well. So those are avenues where if people are ready for change but want to be accelerated or want help and support through it, we've got lots of different options that we have available. And, I think I'm learning how to be of better service. So if people listen to this and they want to reach me, like, send me a message on Instagram. It's Aaron Velky. It's not cryptic. Send me a message. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what you want more of, so that I can continue to take everything that I've learned and the resources that I have and the network that I have and pour them back in. Like, I really believe in that service piece. I will own what I'm great at and what I'm doing. I will also stay aware that I can learn way more and I don't know all the answers. And I will regularly lay down everything I can to be of service. So I'm open if anybody wants help.
Awesome. And I can definitely speak to that. In the short time I've known you, Aaron, you've been incredibly given, incredibly service focused. In the groups in the circles that we are in, you are a leader in those groups, and I'm grateful for it. I've learned a lot from you, and appreciate you having you here. And to everyone else out there, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Aaron Velky, for joining me. Talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Adam.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.